previous part, we have discussed about the section 39 in detail, and with that continuity, we have also discussed something about the section 40. Now, on that previous video, we haven't detailed about the section 40, but in this particularly segment, we are just trying to understand section 40 in more detailed way. I want to make your attention more clear with respect to this section because this is a good section which need to be understood while performing a contract, and because the performance of the contracts is mostly depends upon these sections which are in the way. Now here, when you say that person by whom promise is to be performed, okay, there should be a person who has promised to perform some contract. Okay, now on the promise that he has performed, that specific person is required to perform the contract. Now here, the performed by the promiser himself means here, okay, which is the thing is there, performed by the promiser. Okay, this is the important line, which means if contract especially requires basically the promiser है ना, because the contract especially requires the promiser, that who has done a contract, so who has came into a contract, so the promiser is required here, who has done that promise. So the person who made the promise is to perform it, because why that specific person is required, because that promise has to be fulfilled on the basis of personal skills, qualifications, and expertise, we would say, and then none of else can perform the contract on his behalf. So that particularly the performance, okay, he can only perform, no other person can perform that promise on his behalf. So this thing that this particularly the section is trying to say. Now if we say that that particularly that skill has only that one person, likewise I'll give you an example, a person who is singing, okay, so he will only, he knows, the public knows that he is only the singer, okay, and he has came into an contract that he will do that concert at that particularly location. But what happens due to some kind of health complications, if he sent, can he send any other person instead of him? No, on his behalf he cannot send any other person, because he is only has that particular skill, that particular expertise to sing that particular song, है ना? So this is only the basis to understand this section. So he should have that particularly skill or that expertise to perform that particular contract. So you cannot send, that person cannot send any other person to sing on his behalf, he can only sing, okay, he has that particularly professional skill. So we would say that the promiser cannot delegate or assign the performance to somebody else, he cannot delegate or assign that performance to someone else, okay. So it means that performance is non-transferable in nature. Now I'll give you one important example with respect to the personal skill, that A contracts B with B to paint a portrait, since painting is a personal skill and the contract depends on A's artistic ability. So A must perform the task. Now here you know that A has only that particularly ability to paint that portrait, okay, or to make that portrait. So he cannot delegate his task to somebody else because he has only that particular personal skill. So this is the section which is very vibrant. You have to understand that the trust, the second important part in this particularly section is the trust part, because the doctor, okay, or the man, the patient who went to the hospital, and he actually want that particularly the procedures are need to be followed during a medical issues, okay, during the health issues. So that only can be performed by the doctor, okay, nobody else can perform that. Particularly surgery is going on, let's suppose an example we take, surgery is going on, so you cannot send any other person instead of the surgeon, surgeon can only do the surgery. So the trust is very important here, okay. If a doctor is personally hired for surgery, the doctor must perform it, nobody else can perform it instant in the part of that doctor. So they can't send somebody else in the doctor's place or the surgeon's place. This actually this section is trying to say. So we have discussed about the personal skill, the legitimacy of that person to do or to fulfill that contract. Okay, or instead if that person don't know, so what can that do is can say to any other competent person to do instead in his position that another competent person can do. So we have discussed if the contract doesn't depends on the personal skill, so what will happen? So if the contract doesn't depends upon the personal skill, it means that of any specific person, then someone else like representative or agent, now we have to connect the points. Okay, that instead of that person, who can come? The representative can come. Okay, so जो दूसरा सर्जन है वो आ सकता है उसके बदले, अगर वो नहीं आता है तो ठीक है, और उसके बाद उसका एजेंट आ सकता है। तो ये कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें हैं जो हमें इस सेक्शन में ध्यान रखनी है। ठीक है, अब इसमें मैं एक और आपको एग्जांपल देता हूं, जैसे कि इफ यू हायर अ कुरियर सर्विस to deliver a package, anyone from their team can perform the task as the contract doesn't rely on the specific individual skills. Now यहाँ पर एक important चीज ये है कि भाई जो कुरियर की सर्विस है वो कोई भी पर्सन कर सकता है। ठीक है, इट डजंट मीन्स कि भाई जो बंदे को रिलाय करा है, लेट सपोज ही couldn't came able to deliver that particular service, so who can come instead of him? Any another person can come. So this particularly the contract doesn't relies upon the individual specific skill. ओके, ये कोई भी कर सकता है। दिस टास्क कैन बी डेलीगेटेड टू एनी अनदर नेक्स्ट पर्सन. So some references or the cases that we'll be dealing with respect to section 40 is first R.L. Narayan Chhetri versus Lakshman Rao, AIR 1936. Now the Supreme Court, what does he told about with respect to this fact? The fact of the case is that a promisor agreed to personally carry out a construction project. Now the promisor has said and he has personally agreed to carry out that construction project. Now the court held that later that person denied it to do that contract, okay, to fulfill its contractual obligations. The court held that the contract was of personal nature. So when there is a contract of a personal nature requiring the promisor's specific skill and judgment, it could not be delegated to any another person. So that could not be delegated to any another person. Okay, did you get what I mean to say? सो उसको आप किसी दूसरे को डेलीगेट नहीं कर सकते हो क्योंकि वो आपका काम है। ठीक है, दैट इज योर पर्सनल स्किल एंड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दैट यू कैन डू इट। नाउ द सेकंड इंपॉर्टेंट केस इज दैट द पन्नालाल जानकी दास वर्सेस मोहनलाल कॉर्पोरेशन। सो यहाँ पे जो है AIR 1951 का जो एक केस है, पन्नालाल जानकी दास वर्सेस मोहनलाल कॉर्पोरेशन वाला केस। नाउ द फैक्ट्स ऑफ द केस इज दैट द प्रोमिसर वाज कॉन्ट्रैक्टेड टू डिलीवर स्पेसिफिक गुड्स. See, instead someone else delivered the goods. Now what's happening here, we have to understand it in a more easy way, that nobody else is going to deliver that somebody else can deliver the good here, but जिस person को task दिया गया है कि आप goods को deliver करिए, let's suppose that person couldn't able to come, so that instead of that person somebody else can go. ठीक है, these are the facts of the case. Now the court held that since the nature of the contract doesn't requires personal skill, अब जो वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का नेचर है बेसिकली वो कोई पर्सनल स्किल को नहीं रिक्वायर करता है। ठीक है, इट कुड बी डेलीगेटेड टू एनी अनदर पर्सन। अब उसको जो है कि आप किसी दूसरे पर्सन को क्या कर सकते हो। सो नाउ हियर व्हाट्स हैपनिंग, सिंस द कोर्ट हेल्ड दैट द नेचर ऑफ द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट डजंट रिक्वायर्स पर्सनल स्किल। अब जो यहाँ पे नेचर ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है वो कोई पर्सनल स्किल रिक्वायर नहीं कर रहा है। ठीक है, so it could be delegated to any other person, that it means that it could be an transferable performance. So I hope you got this. Now we are moving just further with respect to the third example and a very important case law, that is Robinson versus Davidson. That is from the English law, and the fact of the case is that a pianist was contracted to perform a concert but failed due to illness. Now what's happening, I have just previously told you about a man who is who has actually entered into a contract to perform the concert as a singer. Okay, he wouldn't able to come and won't able to perform that particularly song or its performance. So what's happened, the contract got breached. Okay, now the court held in this particularly case is that the performance was personal, and could not be delegated. ठीक है, तो उसको आप डेलीगेट नहीं कर सकते हो, तो ये परफॉर्मेंस जो है कि उस पर्टिकुलरली इंसान को करना ही पड़ेगा। ठीक है, सो द प्रोमिसर वाज एक्यूज्ड ड्यू टू इनकैपेसिटी. सो प्रोमिसर वाज एक्यूज्ड ड्यू टू इनकैपेसिटी. नाउ द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट इन्वॉल्व्स द सर्टेन इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स। ठीक है, तीन चीजें जो हम लास्ट में अब डिस्कस कर रहे हैं वो है, पहला है पर्सनल स्किल। जो आपका पर्सनल स्किल है दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट। इफ यू हैव द पर्सनल स्किल सो यू आर बाउंड टू डू दैट पर्टिकुलरली द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, और यू डेलीगेट दैट पर्टिकुलर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट टू अ competent person who can do that particularly task instead of you. Now the second important thing is contract that are not dependent upon the personal skill, है ना। कुछ ऐसे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हैं जो पर्सनल स्किल पे डिपेंडेंट नहीं है, जो कोई दूसरा भी कर सकता है, दैट इज ट्रांसफरेबल इन द नेचर एंड डेलीगेटेड इन द नेचर। ठीक है, तीसरा जो नेचर यहाँ पे क्या देखने को मिला, जो कोर्ट ने एसेस करा द इंटेंशन ऑफ पार्टीज एंड नेचर ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट टू डिटरमिन द एप्लीकेबिलिटी ऑफ सेक्शन 40, कि भाई उनका नेचर क्या है, उनका रिकोर्स ऑफ नेचर क्या है while applying this section. This seen by the court, ठीक है, in many of the observational cases that we have discussed already. So thank you for watching this video. We'll be meeting in the next very soon. Thank you.